We are heading into the season of giving. We're heading into the season of saying thank you and thanks, giving thanks for being a nation where we, as we talked about this morning, have an awful lot. One of the problems right now, though, is there are an awful lot of things impinging upon that. How do you like that word for a post-10 o'clock word this morning? Impinging on our ability to give. A lot of people look around and say taxes and regulations and things like that, the normal culprits. It's like waste, fraud, and abuse. They always go together, right? But one of the other things, too, is the fact that when government does not do its job, for example, putting a budget out there, problems start to happen as a residual domino effect elsewhere, such as the case even right now with places like the Salvation Army. And I have a good friend this morning who's also the corps officer of the Salvation Army here in York, Dennis Camuti, who put out a piece yesterday called The Serious Case of the Missing Corporate Donations. PAEITC donations are being withheld. That's the state-approved Education Improvement Organization and also the Education Improvement Tax Credit. Two organizations that are being hit right now. And we asked Major Camuti to be with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show, and he graciously assented to that. Good morning, Major Camuti. How are you?
I'm fine, Gary. Nice to be with you today.
Nice to be with you. And, of course, this is a season where you guys are getting awfully busy. We're going to talk about some of that this half hour, too. But I was really intrigued by the piece that you sent out yesterday that said you have missing corporate donations right now. And we've been talking a lot about the budget stalemate here, and that really is having an effect, is it not? Or at least it appears to be at this particular point.
That is true. The Salvation Army in New York is fortunate enough to be a recipient of EITC funding, and typically at this time of year, we would have received perhaps $50,000 or $60,000 by the middle of November as a result of the state budget impasse. Of course, no monies have been released or received. So that's how we've been impacted by the budget impasse in York at this point in time.
Tell us a little bit about the Education Improvement Tax Credit and also the Education Improvement Organization, the EIO, and how they work exactly and why that money is not coming through.
I wish I had a precise answer for you, Gary. I'm really not an expert at the, how the EITC programs work. I can only answer how it relates to the Salvation Army.
Right.
And we're fortunate to be a recipient of funds based upon the arts component that is offered through our after-school program.
Right.
We're able to offer drama and a fine arts program, and because of those program components, the Salvation Army, is eligible to receive EITC funding, and local businesses can choose to give money to the Salvation Army and other EITC-eligible organizations, nonprofits who meet the established criteria. And, we're blessed, and it's been a great help. We've been a partner with EITC for 4 years now, and we're thrilled to participate. However, to this point in time, we are experiencing a bit of a problem.
One of the great things that happens here is that you have corporations who do put money into these kinds of programs, and the problem is that a lot of these corporations put money in for the fiscal year 2015, and yet, that money is not being distributed out. Thus, it is hurting the students who would receive that money. Thus, we're behind the eight ball right now. I mean, that would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
Well, currently, we're able to continue our programs unencumbered. However, we cannot continue to do so indefinitely, and eventually our resources will run out, and it's possible that the program, i.e. the children, could be impacted negatively, and we want to avoid that at all costs. And therefore, we're so grateful to the York community who's been so supportive of Salvation Army programs and services in the past to step up and consider helping us out once again through our Christmas programs and other avenues of that are available to them to consider giving to the Salvation Army in York.
It's a time of year where a lot of people start to, think of the Salvation Army, and of course, one of the things that is iconic for the Salvation Army are the kettles that are out there. And I know next week is your big kickoff for the kettles. And tell us a little bit about that and what's going to be going on, because I know people can be invited downtown to take part in this very special event where you prime the pump, so to speak, on the kettles, and you get things kind of kicked off with grand style.
That's true. We're excited about our kettle kickoff next Friday, November 13th at Continental Square at 12 noon, and there'll be refreshments available from our emergency disaster canteen, and we'll actually have a small quartet brass band playing Christmas songs and Thanksgiving songs to lend to the festivities and to kick off our Christmas campaign. And the kettle campaign is an integral part of our fundraising effort. It really is our largest single source of revenue in our fiscal year. We hope to raise about $240,000 through the Christmas Kettle campaign. So it's a labor-intensive effort, and fortunately, people believe in the Army's mission and our ministry and have been quite supportive of the Kettle campaign and other activities at the Salvation Army throughout the year.
So after next Friday, you'll be seeing those red kettles out there and the ringing bells. And I usually like to get out to a few of those during the course of the season and be out there and ring them. And, it's always amazing to people, it makes people think, I think, about giving. And I think that's one of the wonderful things, too, that, you see the goodness of people, I think, when you're, and I guess what you call standing kettles out there. You see the goodness kind of flowing out, especially during this time of year. You just wish that, and I shouldn't say you wish, because I think it is infectious. I think people do that year-round. We just don't seem to focus as much on it. It doesn't seem to be as focused a moment as it is during this particular time of year.
That's true. There's something extra special about the Christmas season, which brings out, the best in people, and they have a strong desire to give back and to help others. And I remember reading a story not too long ago about Governor George Pataki, the former governor of the state of New York, who told about when he was a young boy, his dad took him out to, as you said, stand at a kettle in upstate New York as a young child with his father, and it had a great impact on him, and it helped teach him the value and the need to help other people. And I was really touched to read about how Governor Pataki's life was impacted by that lesson that his dad taught him through that experience of standing on a kettle so many, many years ago. So I think of what Jesus said in the Scriptures, that it's better to give than receive. And as we give of ourselves and we invest our life in other people through volunteer activity or giving monetarily, we get so much more back in return and positive feelings about ourselves, and we really benefit. Jesus knew exactly what he was talking about when he shared that.
It's always interesting to me as we hear about the kettles, and I hope we can check with you on how it's going this season. But I'm always amazed at what people will put into the kettles many times. I mean, it's not unusual to find rings in there and different things like that, right?
I'm amazed and surprised at the unique items that we receive in our kettles here in York. As you mentioned, gold cougarons on occasion. I've learned a lot more about the value of gold since I've moved to York.
Right.
And I watch those sort of things now with keen interest. Engagement rings, wedding rings, believe it or not, every now and then a gold tooth. It's really quite astounding what goes into those Christmas kettles. And it turns out to be valuable pieces that we can sell to, a jeweler and receive the value of the gold. So people in York are very creative in the way in which they choose to give, and we're grateful, certainly.
Do you have and I hadn't talked about this before, but do you have one memory of standing kettles yourself that really kind of jumps out at you over all the years that you've been involved in these kind of things? And is there one moment that you kind of remember that just kind of is emblazoned somewhere in your memory?
I love kettles, and I love to meet the people on kettles. It's a wonderful experience, and I guess this just came to me as you mentioned it when I was a cadet. attending the Salvation Army School for Officers training, part of our training experience was to man Christmas kettles in New York City, and we would do that from Thanksgiving on until a day or so before Christmas. And my assigned location was at the corner of Church and Liberty Street in downtown New York, which is right across the street from the World Trade Center.
Right.
And it was probably the last day that I was actually standing there as a first-year cadet. A group of people came out from the World Trade Center, and they asked us if we would be willing to go and play for their office Christmas party. And so we said, sure, we'd be happy to do that, and took a group of folks up to very, very high up in the World Trade Center. And believe it or not, it was the Cantor Fitzgerald office.
Wow.
And then, after 9/11, I heard about the tragedy that occurred in that office where most of those people lost their lives as a result of the terrorist attacks.
Wow.
And it all came back to me in a very stark and powerful way. And it hit pretty close to home, knowing that I had the opportunity to interact with these fine people who were so joyous on that occasion just a few days before Christmas, and that would have been 1983. So it would have been 18 years prior to the devastating events of 9/11. But I did have that connection with the folks at Cantor Fitzgerald.
That's an amazing story, because you think about that, and all the little things that happen to people during that time. And it's always amazing to me too, where people will give their extra change when they come out of a store. They'll, it's always fun to see when people will walk away, and then they'll maybe come back sometimes and put $1 in or whatever they have, and it's just kind of an incredible thing to watch. I've had a chance to stand for hours at a time and doing this, and I love to observe people doing this, and the other part of it is the friendliness. So many times in our daily lives, we seem to run by people pretty quickly. We don't mean to, but, it's just the nature of how fast life is. And it seems like we slow down and we talk a little bit more. Maybe we learn a little bit more about each other during that time, too, which is maybe a good thing to go along with, what we give to the kettles as well.
I think that's part of the magic of Christmas. And I'm probably very biased, but I truly believe that the Salvation Army Christmas kettles have become an iconic part of the American Christmas experience. And I think if the kettles weren't there, there would be a void in our lives to some extent, and people would miss it. Certainly we at the Salvation Army would, because the revenue that we receive is important in providing much-needed services to folks in need. But beyond that, just the intangible aura that you get from seeing those kettles on the street, it kind of is one of those things that reinforces, it's Christmas again. The Salvation Army is out on the Christmas kettles.
Major Committee, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the other things that are going on, too. They're maybe lesser known, but no less important for people. And, again, helping people here at Christmas time with your coat drive and your angel tree. And I want to get into that when we come back here with Major Dennis Camuti, who is the Corps Officer of the Salvation Army of York. He'll be right back with us here on News Radio 910 WSBA. This is the Gary Sutton Show. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Major Dennis Camuti, who is the Corps Officer of the Salvation Army right here in York. Major, a lot of people know about the kettles, and as you mentioned, they've become very iconic and really a sign that the Christmas season is officially here. But there are some other things that you have going on, too, that I think deserve note here. And, again, things that people can get involved in out there. You've got a coat drive and you've got the angel tree. Tell people a little bit about, what that's really all about.
It's wonderful to have the support of the community to provide these programs to people in need throughout York County, and we're certainly blessed by a very generous donor base, and I'm amazed at their generosity and the faith and stock that they put in the Salvation Army and helping us perform our mission. But the Angel Tree is a vitally important program, and the concept is quite simple. We have angel trees placed at strategic points throughout the county in businesses and stores. And a person interested in purchasing a toy for a child would simply take the angel off of the tree, and you'll have the age and the gender of a child on the angel, and you would buy what you would feel would be an age-appropriate gift for the child, and then bring it back to the store. We would then pick it up and take it into our building for distribution on our Christmas distribution day. And my wife tells me what I think is a very touching story about the fact when she was a little girl. She came from a single-parent home, large family, large number of children, and the only gift that was under the Christmas tree for her when she was a little girl was a doll that was provided by the Salvation Army. So that's the kind of things that people are still doing today by participating in the Angel Tree program. You can make a huge difference in the life of a child, letting them know that they're important and not forgotten at Christmas time.
You know, one of the things we'll be doing, again, as we've done for several years, is have an angel tree up at Christmas Magic right at the WSBA table, and we'll have those angels hanging on the tree. And if you look at them when you go through Christmas Magic, stop by there, and you can pick up one of those angels and buy a toy. And I might suggest that you drop by 50 East King Street right there and drop it off at the Salvation Army. You can see the good work they're doing right there, but we'll have that up there as well, Major, so that'll be one of the spots that people can stop by, and we have a lot of people that go through starting on the day after Thanksgiving when Christmas Magic opens up, and our angel tree will be very prominent right there next to our table.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks so very much, and we wish you great success.
Well, we always enjoy seeing people, and they'll stop by and look at it, and for many people it's a curiosity because they haven't seen it before, but now hearing about it, you'll know what you're looking for when you're going through there, and then just drop it off. And again, I'm correct on the address on that, 50 East King, right?
Correct. 50 East King would be the place to drop it off, yes.
Now, you also do a coat drive, which has been a big, big thing. And again, you know, right now we've got 70-degree weather out there, but it will not remain that way for much longer. In fact, tomorrow it's supposed to drop down into the 50s again. And tell us a little bit about your coat drive.
Yeah, Coat Drive is a wonderful project, and actually the coat distribution will be taking place next week on November 11th and 12th, and folks will be coming in from across the county to choose a gently used coat that's been dry cleaned by local dry cleaners, very generously so, to make sure that they're clean and ready to go. So it's a great program, and nothing worse than being cold on a winter's day. And if we can help keep a child or an elderly person warm during the cold, blustery, windy days of winter here in South Central PA, I think that's a good thing to be engaged in.
And one final thing I wanted to ask you about. You know, if anyone ever wants to see how the monies for the Salvation Army go to work, think of all the kids who maybe aren't going to have that great Christmas. Think of your wife, for example, only had one doll there when she was a child, and that came from the Salvation Army. But if you've ever had a chance to help, or if you've ever heard about how the toys are distributed and put together, you need to come to the chapel at the Salvation Army and walk up and down the rows of toys. You have been getting people in who kind of give you lists during this time, and then they're distributed. Tell us a little bit about the distribution and maybe how people out there might want to volunteer to help.
Yeah, it really is an amazing process, and I'm so impressed by the organization of our staff, and I was so blessed to inherit this and walk in and observe how they've organized the toy distribution, and it really is a phenomenal success and well organized, as I mentioned. And this year we're going to do a toy shop program and set the toys up in our gymnasium so the parents of the children can actually come through and choose a gift that they feel is appropriate for their young child. And we will need volunteers to escort the moms and dads through that process. And I think that was probably something that could warm the cockles of somebody's heart, walking through and helping a family choose toys for their children to receive at Christmas.
Where could people call to volunteer? I know there's companies out there that like to send groups, or even individuals. Where could you call? Yeah,
I would suggest that you call our main office at 848 2364 and ask to speak to Michelle Harris. She's the volunteer coordinator, and she'll get everybody pointed in the right direction.
She does that all the time. She's a lovely lady, and Michelle will get you organized in a hurry. Major, final thoughts for people here before we leave. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that are not happening today, but also things that are happening, and the salvation continues on despite, some of the ebbs and flows of economics in our society.
That's true, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm just amazed at the generosity of the folks in York County who are willing to step up and support our mission, and we're pleased to be able to really provide a lengthy list of services to people. Our family service reaches out to about 20,000 people on an annual basis, providing food, clothing, prescription medication, utility assistance, rental assistance. Those type of basic necessities of life are able to be provided through the generosity of the donors to the Salvation Army in York. And we're just so thankful for their kindness and their great support of our mission.
And if you want to start the Christmas season in great style, next Friday at 12 o'clock on Continental Square, the Salvation Army will be there. You'll see them down there. You'll see the canteen. There'll be donuts and coffee, and the Major and a few others playing some pretty good Christmas songs on the brass, and it'll be a great way to start off your Christmas season. Why don't you get on down there next Friday at 12 o'clock? Major Camuti, always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you so much for all you're doing, and thank you so much for what the Salvation Army is doing out there for people.
Thank you, Gary. Blessings on you and your listeners. Have a great day, a wonderful weekend.
Thanks so much. Major Dennis Camuti with us here on the Gary Sutton Show, the Corps officer for the Salvation Army right here in York.